Every night my entire town locks down for 12 minutes. I finally learned why. You know, the kind of town where everyone knows everyone? Where the local diner serves coffee in mugs stamped with your name, and everyone will lend a hand to a neighbor in need? A place where generations of families grew up together? Well, that is the sort of place where I live. Sure, it is a bit rustic. Hell, I barely have reliable internet. But it is nice enough for us. It's the kind of place where time feels like it's standing still. Except for one thing, the nights. The nights here are a little different. I've lived here all my life, and there's no place I'd rather be. Or at least, that's what I used to think. This place has its quirks, like any small town. But there's a big one that stands out for us. You see, every night, without fail, at 11:38 p.m., the town locks down. I'm not talking about just closing up shops and less people being out and about. I'm talking about a real lockdown. Doors slam shut and are barred. Windows rattle and lock, and everyone knows they have to be inside and stay inside. At least for what happens next. The next part is strange. No one ever sees anything moving out there directly. But we all just know. We just know that somehow something outside is trying to get in. An eerie silence falls over the streets. It's like the whole town is holding its breath. Then in 12 minutes exactly, it is just over. I've always wondered why it happens at exactly 11:38 p.m. People here don't talk about it much. But when they do, they whisper. They say it's just the way things are, that it's been happening for as long as anyone can remember. But I know better. I've seen it. Whatever it is. The first time I noticed it, I was still pretty young. I think I was 10 or 11. I'd stayed up late reading some of my favorite comic books. My parents warned me, like many other kids in town, that we had to go to bed early. But if we did get up, then absolutely no leaving the house or leaving any windows or doors open. I was not asleep, but was still following the rules, when I heard the strangest sound. It was a low, guttural hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I looked out the window, and that's when I saw it. The streets were empty, but there was a presence. It's hard to describe. It wasn't a person or an animal. It was something else. Something that didn't feel like it belonged. It moved with this strange, jerky motion, like it wasn't entirely in control of its own body. It radiated a disturbing sense of distortion that made my head hurt, and my eyes had a difficult time focusing on it. I could feel this overwhelming sense of hunger that made my skin crawl. Before I knew it, it was over. It had passed my house, and I realized I had been staring out my window in a hypnotic daze. It was almost midnight, and I went to sleep and did not tell my parents about the disturbing thing I had seen. I didn't see it again for years, but the feeling never left. Every night at 11:38 on the dot, when the town shuts down, I know it is there. We all try to act like it's not. Just behave like we have a strict curfew and that nothing is really out there. Yet the people who are too bold or foolish and think that it's nothing, well, they don't last long. Those of us who are still here know that whatever that thing is, it's out there. Stalking, hunting, looking for anything, an open window, a cracked door. Disappearances are frequent, especially for such a small town. The police have a whole song and dance for anyone who goes missing from the outside. But when it is a resident, well, it is more of a case where the families of the victims are reprimanded for not having known better. No one knows why the window of time is so mercifully brief. Almost just as suddenly as it starts, it's over. By 11:50 p.m., the streets are quiet again, and the town feels normal. But it's not normal. It never was. People here have learned to live with it. They lock their doors, shut their windows, and pretend it's not happening. I asked my parents why we don't just move, and they never gave me a good answer. All they said was, it wouldn't do any good. We have to endure. It has to be here. It is safer for everyone if it's here. It did not make sense. I know people can get attached to places, but it felt crazy to me. I couldn't just pretend this was normal. Not after what I saw. Not after what I felt. There was something out there. And it was worse than anyone would believe. It was just recently that I saw it again. It was a normal night. At least as normal as nights could be in my town. I was getting ready to go to bed when I noticed that my cat Quincy was missing. I looked everywhere, but I couldn't find him. Then I heard something and looked through the window to spot a familiar shape, and my heart sank. He was outside. He must have gotten out when I had come home earlier and was sauntering along the sidewalk, clueless to the impending danger. The time was 11:36 p.m. I had no idea if the creature did anything to animals, but I did not want to find out. I had never let Quincy outside before, and he did not come back to my shouted calls for his return. I had to do something dangerous and stupid to save him. I rushed outside, sprinting toward him and trying to grab him and bring him in before it was too late. I managed to reach him and pick him up, but then I froze when I sensed a presence as I was scrambling back to my door. Quincy's ears folded back and he hissed. I felt paralyzed, and then I thought I saw it again. It was different this time, larger and more overwhelming than before. Its presence seemed to fill the entire street, pressing against the houses like an unseen force. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place. My breath caught in my throat. To my horror, it seemed to finally regard me. Quincy jumped out of my hands and ran back to my house. He had fortunately evaded whatever interest the thing might have had with him. The creature's head twisted unnaturally in my direction, its distorted features coalescing into more recognizable shapes. Staring into the grotesque visage forced a scream out of me as I beheld the blasphemous impossibility. I turned and sprinted away, screaming like a maniac, my heart hammering against my ribcage with such force that each beat felt like it might crack my chest open. The sound of its pursuit echoed behind me, a wet slapping noise like a monstrous jellyfish gliding across the ground. Its deafening roar filled the air, shaking the ground beneath my feet as I ran for my life. I did not know if I could get away. No one I knew had been outside and survived. I ducked into an alley, my hands shaking as I pressed myself against the wall. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, and I could feel sweat dripping down my face. I didn't dare look around the corner. I didn't dare move. And then I heard the harrowing screams. They sliced through the air, piercing and full of terror. My heart raced as I strained to see who was making them, but all I could make out were shadowy figures caught in the open. The screams were short, sharp, and then they were swallowed by the night. The deafening silence that followed only added to the fear weighing down on me. I stayed pressed against the wall, trying to make myself as small and invisible as possible. The darkness seemed to come alive with every creak and rustle, amplifying my fear. I held my breath until I heard the sound of the creature moving away. And then, just like that, it was gone, but the eerie stillness lingered, haunting me even after the clock struck 11:50 p.m. The streets were once again quiet, but my nerves were still on edge. I stumbled back to my house, every step feeling like a race against time. Quincy waited anxiously at the door and bolted inside with me, seeking shelter inside. The horrible night had left me shaken, but grateful to be alive. Whatever that thing is, it does not belong in this world. It is not of this time or place, and its presence is so unsettling. It makes your mind ache just to catch a glimpse of it. No one can tell of its origins. Maybe they are lost in the depths of history. But whatever its history, it remains. Always there, lurking in the shadows every night without fail. At that point, I did the one thing you probably think everyone should have done by now. I left my hometown. I moved to the largest city I could reach to get away from it all. My parents did not approve. In fact, they tried to tell me I could not go. I was so desperate to get out of there that I had to sneak away in the early morning, when they could not interfere. I never understood why we all stayed there and tried to ignore the eldritch nightmare that hunted us at night. It seemed so simple, and I felt better at first. The city felt alive with the hum of traffic and the distant chatter of people during the day, a cacophony that made me feel safe, anonymous. Indeed, I thought I'd left the nightmare behind, that the creature was just a memory, a relic of a past I could bury. My new apartment is a cozy studio on the 5th floor, with a view of the bustling streets below. High enough where looking out the window does not fill me with dread at night. Unfortunately, something happened last night that has shattered the fragile illusion of my peaceful transition. On the first night in my new place, I sat on the edge of my bed, flipping through a magazine to distract myself from the creeping unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. The clock on the nightstand read 11:28 p.m. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the creature was gone, that I was safe now. But the weight of the past lingered, a shadow in the corner of my mind that I couldn't shake. By 11:38 p.m., the city outside my window was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of traffic and distant music had faded, replaced by an unsettling stillness. I tried to focus on the magazine, but my eyes kept drifting toward the window, the darkness beyond the glass pressing in on me. And then, I heard a soft, tentative tap against the pane. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, the magazine slipping from my fingers and falling to the floor. The sound was light, almost imperceptible, but it sent a chill coursing through my veins. I told myself it was nothing. I was just being paranoid. But then it came again, another tap, this time more insistent. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My eyes were fixed on the window, the darkness beyond it seeming to pulse with a life of its own. The tapping stopped, and for a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, a faint scratching sound, like claws on glass. My heart sank. I knew that sound. I knew what it meant. Slowly, with my legs trembling beneath me, I rose from the bed and approached the window. My hand reached for the curtain, hesitated, and then, with a deep, shaky breath, I pulled it back. What I saw made me freeze in terror. The creature was perched on the fire escape outside my window, its twisted form silhouetted against the moonlit sky. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its presence seemed to fill the room, pressing in on me with an unspeakable horror. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The creature's head tilted to the side, its gaze locked on mine, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. It was here. It had followed me. And then, as if in slow motion, its mouth opened, revealing rows of jagged teeth, and it let out a low, guttural growl. The sound shattered the paralysis that held me in place. I stumbled back, my voice finally breaking free in a raw, terrified scream. The creature's form seemed to blur and shift, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable darkness. And then, everything went black. I regained consciousness, and I know it is not over. There is no escape from this thing that has followed me. I consider what my parents had said when I asked them why we never moved. Then, with dawning horror, I realized the truth of their words. It is safer for everyone if it's here. They did not mean it was safer for us. They meant it was safer for everyone else. They knew the danger. They stayed to keep it there. Now, in my ignorance, I have made a huge mistake. Somehow it knew I left. It has followed me here, to a place where over 1 million people will soon know about its existence, and maybe more if it moves beyond that. I am so sorry for bringing it here. I didn't know. Please, for your own safety, stay inside between 11:38 p.m. and 11:50 p.m. By now, it might not be safe wherever you are as well.